Julie, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on the program today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good. How's the neighborhood there in Deep Blue Alexandria been reacting over the past week? Have you seen parents? Are they looking a little haggard? Are kids asking what's going to happen, mommy? Are you seeing these scenes play out amongst your neighbors?
Oh yeah. There was there was a lot of hand wringing and pearl clutching the morning after. There was a lot of crying, hugging each other. There was there was a lot of drama. So we decided.
Has anybody? I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but
Yeah.
has anybody done any stories on like the attendance for the schools there in like Fairfax County, Alexandria City? Because I imagine like day after election, there were probably just a lot of parents who kept their kids home. The kids didn't want to go. And
I don't think it went that far. I think there was a lot
maybe the
of
parents wanted the kids out of the house so they could call out sick and start day drinking.
There-
I think that probably was what was going on.
day drinking. Well,
Now that I think about it.
I think there were a few hangovers the morning after. So yeah, they probably wanted to crawl back in bed. And as Chris Rock said on Saturday Night Live this weekend, you guys have to spend a lot of time on Facebook tomorrow. So they all had to get up there and talk about how outrageous the election results were. But yeah, so it was tense. And I will say that this year we decided not to put any kind of political campaign signs in our yard, which was similar to the Democrats in our neighborhood who also we saw almost no Hillary campaign signs, which is astonishing because, everyone's very political. We live right outside of D.C. So there was a shortage on both sides, but we decided not to. And I'm glad we didn't because I think people are so unhinged that I would feel unsafe. So
I was going to say, has the shock turned to rage now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have seen some of obviously the protests that we're seeing nationwide, and but I am a little bit nervous about things, and I don't want to be overly dramatic. I live in a very safe neighborhood, but yeah, just some of the reactions from people is astonishing to me. The sort of lack of control and perspective. I wrote a piece for Acculturated talking about how you need to not scare your kids, and part of the reason I wrote that was because the morning after I get up. And I actually started my piece off saying, the morning after the election, I vowed to my husband not to go on Facebook. And then I promptly logged on. Okay? Within seconds. So I go on, and I was astonished by people admitting. I don't think I was astonished that this actually happened, but they were talking about this publicly on Facebook, how they wept in their children's arms, how they broke the news to their kids the next day, and then their kids started bawling. I talked about how one mom said that her child was afraid of what Mr. Trump would do to her family, as if Mr. Trump was watching them directly. Right? It was just very, and I never got the sense that these parents were reassuring these children. So, I said, this is damaging. This is bad. You need to not be hysterical in front of your children.
Yes. And one would think, again, you wouldn't have to say that, but we're having to say a lot of things you wouldn't think you'd have to say. Like I had to say on Twitter last night, don't go play in traffic. Like you would think you would, because bad things could happen. You could get hit. We've seen this. But again, apparently some Americans need a reminder of these things. And so, you're right. Look, we saw that video of the mom who kicked her little kid out of the house for apparently voting for Trump in the mock election, right? We've seen these unhinged parents who, again, they may be freaking out. But think back to when you were a kid, Julie. Do you remember your parents ever freaking out in front of you about news events?
No, actually, when in the 80s, I told my mom and dad that I wanted to vote for Jimmy Carter because Jimmy Carter cried, and I felt bad for him.
And they kicked you out of the house.
My parents thought it was hilarious. They thought it was hilarious, but yeah. So I was quite the little rebel back then. But I also advised people to put this election in perspective, right? And I also want to mention that at the beginning of my piece, I talked about how some of the reactions were similar to what I saw when Barack Obama was elected to his second term. I saw a lot of hysterics on the right. So this isn't just left, although I think this is worse. I do.
I think this is worse.
This is
you didn't
worse.
You didn't see riots in the streets. You didn't see mass arrests.
No, you didn't see that. But I think a lot of that is organized. I mean, I don't think that's organic, but still, I mean,
then again, you didn't see the Tea Party Express or Freedom Works doing that.
I
You know,
agree.
again, if you want to talk about the organizations.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
But even among I think just the average voter in 2012, you're right. It was like a punch to the gut, right? Because there were a lot of voters for Romney who thought that he was going to win, and he didn't. But you also had, the previous 4 years, so you were already feeling kind of down.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You've had 8 years of Obama, and by the way, nobody in the mainstream media, and certainly nobody in the lefty media, ever told these voters that there was any real possibility, right? It was a joke.
Yeah.
That Donald Trump was even running, so there was no possibility that he was going to win. So this was, I think, a double punch to the gut for these Clinton supporters because they weren't prepared. Their media failed them badly.
Well, I don't understand also this idea that are people forgetting it's a democracy and we have generally a two-party system. I mean, I know there's Stein and Johnson, but that people did have a choice. I mean, that's the thing that amazes me is that there seems to be people forgetting that people did have a choice. And so, they all would do very well in totalitarian regimes where there's really not a choice. I mean, I think that's honestly where they want to go. But I also told people, look, put this in perspective. Let's think about the things that America has survived. Okay, let's just, for argument's sake, say this truly is a terrible thing, which I don't agree it is, but let's say just for argument's sake, let's put this in perspective, right? And so I ticked off the other things, right? Like World War II and Pearl Harbor and institutional racism, women not having the vote. Like there are a lot of things, Vietnam, market crashes, depressions. I mean, there's any number of things you can name that might be worse than this. And so to suggest to a child that this is the worst thing, and I actually saw someone say your future is doomed to their child.
No.
So I mean, I'm drawing from my own Facebook feed. So I imagine it. I mean, I have I probably the 2/3 of my feed is more conservative. But I mean, but I can only imagine what other people were saying. And so
right.
So you got to put it in perspective. And then I talked a little bit about the phrase loyal opposition, which is really important at this time. And I know you're a big history buff. You know all about this, Cam. But it's it's the idea that the opposing party, the party not in power, which is the Democrats now because they don't control either house of Congress, nor do they control the executive branch, that they can oppose the party in office and the man who holds that office, which is the president, without being considered treasonous. And it's actually their duty. They improve our government by objecting to certain things. And so, these are the kinds of civic lessons we should be having, conversations we should be having with our kids, not telling them that their future is doomed and that the world is ending. So I really was disappointed to see the hysteria, the alarmism out there in the parenting world after this election.
Yeah, I have been too. And again, sadly, I don't think it's going to get any better. I think this is wonderful advice that you have given. I wish that every parent out there would follow it. And it'll be ignored. And the next time the Republicans lose an election, it'll probably be ignored by many on our side, but it's still good advice to follow. I would like to think that, looking back to 2008, 2012, so no, you didn't have Republicans rioting in the streets. But what you did have was, again, I think a grassroots organizing of, okay, so we lost, but where did we win? And where can we push our ideas? Where can we try to make advances? I realize that that's hard right now for the left because they've lost much of middle America.
Yeah.
You look at, it was a nightmare in state legislatures for Democrats this election cycle. And it really shouldn't have been because they've been trending down for several election cycles in a row now. California is their great experiment, Julie.
It really
right?
is.
I mean, if you want to try to show the world that progressivism works, well, we need to be looking at what California is doing over the next couple of years. Frankly, I don't think it's going well.
No.
And I don't think it's going to go particularly well. But that's, I mean, look, that's isn't that the where progressivism is spotlighted? It's firmly in charge. It probably has veto-proof majorities in the
Yeah.
legislature right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it does.
So all these parents need to tell their kids, just look at California.
Yeah.
Look at California and see your bright future ahead, little young progressives.
Well, and this is the other thing. I mean, you can move. Okay? You can move. You don't have to stay in a red state. You can move to a blue state. There's plenty of, you can move to urban centers. You don't have to live with the basket of deplorables in your neighborhood. You can move. Again, I think that people really lost perspective. I was outraged and upset after 2008 and 2012. I was very excited to see the Tea Party, which is filled with very civilized people who don't key cars and blow things up. And that was that is the very definition of loyal opposition. These were patriots. These are people who believed in the Constitution and wanted really a return to the Constitution. But they weren't hurting anyone, and they fought with words and with ideas. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that on the left this time. It's a little bit frightening, I think, for people on the right. I think it's frightening for Trump supporters. But hopefully things will calm down. I don't know. And again, maybe they can all just move to California and secede. No, I'm kidding.
Listen, Cal Exit, they're talking about it. And in fact, I just saw Kyle Griffin from a MSNBC tweet. Barbara Boxer is introducing a bill to abolish the Electoral College. Says it's a, quote,
So
outdated,
predictable.
undemocratic system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, students of history might remember a time when Democrats got really freaked out about a Republican getting elected president. And before the Republican was even in office, they took to the streets in protest and they started threatening secession. And they tried to, again, change the Constitution so that they could get their way because they didn't like what happened. That did not end up well for the country, Julie.
No.
And look, I'm not saying that we're going to end up in a civil war. But I'm saying that, petulant losers in politics can wreak havoc in America. And I think one of the things that Americans kind of voted for on Election Day was we're tired of having havoc wreaked in our lives.
Yes.
Right? We kind of just want to restore some sort of balance where we actually have some control over our personal and our private lives. And we don't always have people nannying us and telling us what to do from the moment we wake up in the morning till the moment we lay our head down on our pillow. And by the way, that pillow has to be pre-approved as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that we're living in an age for many years of a powerful elite pushing people around, and this was, if you want to put it this way, it was a power grab. It was really. I think that nobody was thrilled about the options that we had. I think that a lot of people felt sort of like, okay, who am I going to vote for? It wasn't sort of this, it was. I think a lot of people sort of felt sick when they went into the voting booth, and yet, look, people. It sounds like a cliche, but people really wanted change, and I think they saw the culture and many other things just going wrong in this country. It sounds like a cliche. I think people voted for change when they elected Barack Obama the first year, but it was time for some changes in Washington.
All right, Julie, listen, we got to run. I could talk with you all afternoon, but you got stuff to do. We got stuff to do. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And I will talk to you later in the week for the Bespoke Parenting Hour podcast.
That's right. I will talk to you then.
All right. Julie Gunlock joins from the Independent Women's Forum here on NRA News, Cam and Company.